over the course of this summer, our community has started to notice wild anomalies in Google Trends data I'd never seen in 18 years. I probably spent more time on Google Trends than anyone in the world. There's something that we need to talk about. It's controversial.
Let me pull up your X account real quick because I think I know where you're going with this. Very controversial.
Why does every single person on X, if you say anything remotely negative about a company or stock, behave as if they're the founder of the company? These are just investment theses. That's all it is.
Way, just because you're saying something negative doesn't mean that you're negative on the company, but you have to be realistic about all the possibilities.
Exactly. I'm like, and by the way, I did this thread. I worked really hard on it. I spent like my entire Sunday.
I think it was a fantastic thread, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. I did work hard on it. And the thread is something that's been really bugging me because one thing that we've relied on for the past 18 years, almost equivalently to anything else, it's almost as important as the comment analysis that we do on TikTok and other social channels, is search traffic. I've always said that search traffic, G Trends, Google Trends, is the best data source in the world for investors, and it's completely free, but you have to learn how to use it. You can't just like go on there and pull charts because you'll get confused. You'll misconstrue what you think the data is showing you. But our community has become experts at extracting alpha from search traffic. Okay. And over the course of this summer, our community has started to notice wild anomalies in Google Trends data, things that I'd never seen in 18 years. I probably spent more time on Google Trends than anyone in the world. And the part of the reason why I got so amped up on Lululemon is because like 14 different product categories at Lululemon were hitting all-time highs in the middle of the summertime on Google Trends. And these are seasonal items that normally peak on Black Friday or the holiday week of Christmas. I'd never seen anything like it before, ever in 18 years. And we started speculating something is off.
These are some examples from your tweet. This is Lululemon shorts, and you see this like all-time high, like eclipsing even the peaks, the annual peaks, and it just said something has to be wrong. There's something going on with the data. What could have changed with Google Trends, not just for this search term, but for a bunch of other search terms?
And Dave, Jordan, remember earlier this year when we talked about, Google has to be losing 1 or 2 or 3 points of search traffic to ChatGPT based on our estimations. And then they came out with earnings and didn't. And then they came out with earnings again last quarter when we were like, we think they might be down 3 or 4 points of search traffic, which is pretty big. And they actually grew search traffic and grew search revenue. And now we're seeing these anomalies on G Trends. And I start doing research and speaking to people, realizing that a lot of people working with AI scientists that I spoke to said that they are now tapping into Google search at ChatGPT and other AIs, other LLMs. Now, ChatGPT used to rely mostly on Bing, but this summer they started expanding well beyond Bing. And Jordan, you might even have some experience with this because you're working on some apps that do a lot of search. So we looked into the data agreements that Google had both on AdWords and Google Trends. And what was astonishing is that they don't mention anything about external third-party AI being included or excluded or filtered out. So I think it was AdWords or maybe Google Trends. They mentioned that they do not include the Google AI summary data, okay? Because they have full control over that. But what they don't have control are the 1 billion people using ChatGPT. And in some situations, when you put a query into ChatGPT, it generates not just one search, but it could generate dozens, or theoretically, if you're doing deep research, hundreds of search queries that not only search, but then will do deep search and actually click on links that could be advertiser links. Okay.
Could be, yeah. So we don't really know. I'd hate to, point at things that we don't 100% know. But yeah, I think that anytime you're working with AI now, especially some of the thinking models or the deep research models, we know that they've got access to the internet and they use one method or another to get that information. Generally, the easiest way is a search engine, right? Because you can use natural language that you generate from the LLM to then interact with the search engine. So yeah, it could be one query, it could be tens, it could be, like you said, it could be 100 query. We don't know, and it probably depends on the context and the things that you're doing with the LLM. But yeah, we're pretty sure now that these LLMs are talking to Google.
So Jordan, I want to ask you a question because like I did that post, it got, I don't know, 700,000-ish views. What's really interesting, there were some articles that were printed the days after talking about my Twitter thread and analyzing the extent to which that might actually be happening. And then yesterday, Michael Parekh wrote an article called AI, the Open AI versus Google AI Data Dance, okay? RTZ number 825, if anybody wants to read it. And in this article, Jordan, I sent to you and Dave, you could maybe explain it a little better. There's a company called SERP API that OpenAI is, quote, getting the data from, an 8-year-old web scraping firm, which listed OpenAI as a customer on its website as recently as May last year. It removed the reference for reasons that couldn't be learned. And it's not just OpenAI, it's other LLMs that are using them as well. So, George, could you explain, like, how, because I think you utilize some of these APIs for your AI.
Yes, the SERP API is, if you go to the SERP API website, they are essentially, they're an API that you can hit so that you can scrape data. So you can scrape Google searches, you could scrape G Trends. If you look at their site, I mean, they've got like 60 or 70 products, right? And so they're like a one place that a developer can go and just hit APIs and not have to worry about the complications of, spreading requests across IP addresses or spoofing user agents or any of these things that you'd have to do in order to get, past like a corporate firewall or, because Google has protections in place to keep you from programmatically just hammering their systems. But the SERP API is one of these companies that, works to mitigate those factors by spreading the request across tons of servers and caching and all of these different things, right? So that's kind of the goal of SERP API. And so I don't know if it's confirmed or not that OpenAI uses SERP API. It would certainly make sense if they did.
But Jordan, where the controversy comes in, and again, people are like, Chris, like advertisers would be complaining if this was true. No, because it's such a tiny piece of the overall search business that it would barely show up right now on an advertiser's radar because the click to conversion rate, meaning the rate at which consumers click to purchase is so low, and the percentage of clicks coming from AI queries is so low right now, it's enough to theoretically move the growth needle for Google because 1 or 2 points makes a difference. But for an advertiser, it would be relatively difficult.
Well, but I think it could be skewed, right? Because what are you doing with API? A lot of companies might be doing product research, right? And so if these queries are skewed towards products or skewed towards things that advertisers are advertising, then who knows, right? I don't think.
But Jordan, what we're saying is those clicks are not resulting in a consumer then buying something to the same degree that a consumer clicking might ultimately convert to a purchase. It's an unknown. And so what caused the controversy is at the end of my thread, I mentioned that I was short Google because I have to. That's part of the disclosure. It was a small short position. I can't not disclose it. But that's not what the thread was about. What the thread was about is that Google needs to, number one, confront this and fix Google Trends because Google Trends is unusable right now. For the first time in 18 years, it's unusable. I can't trust it. I want them to fix it. And on AdWords, they owe it to all the world's advertisers to tell us, are 800 million people that are utilizing ChatGPT queries, and many of those queries just basically present summary data, are they clicking on their ads? And they're not a human, and they're not even supplying a link back to a human.
So, I've done a little bit of research on this, and from the literature that I've seen, Google does have the ability to classify different types of searches that they serve, right? Was it served to a browser to a human, or was it served to like a non-browser to some, program or to, some automated system, right? And so it seems like what they should be doing is classifying those that are coming from either SERP API or from OpenAI, wherever they're coming from. They should be able to classify those, give a breakdown, and let you either filter that in Google Trends or not include those automated searches in Google Trends. But one of those two things I would think is something that they would need to do.
But they are not disclosing it or even discussing it on their product page to advertisers or for AdWords policy. They just don't talk about it, which tells me that perhaps, maybe, let's be honest here. This is helping Google right now. This is quite possibly helping drive more searches.
Yeah, if we're going to be like conspiracy theorists about it, then yeah, I think that there is a piece of us that's like, yeah, they're keeping this held secret so they can just inflate their search numbers, and they can continue making revenue from their, the one place that they make the bulk of their revenue, which is search, right?
It's a theory. We don't know. But if that's what's happening, the reason why I was shorting Google, because should that surface to the world that that's happening, that one story would be catastrophic. And I'll remind everyone that when Eddie Q earlier this year mentioned that he was seeing for the first time in history of Safari a reduction in queries, that Google dropped 9% in one day. And then it quickly rebounded when Google said, no, we're growing queries overall. But are you? Or artificial, like, mass AI queries pushing the number up artificially?
Yeah, look, I think that that's the question, but that's what we want is just transparency. I don't think, we know one way or the other. I think we kind of lean towards we think that they're being inflated because of, obviously the tests that you did, and the articles that have come out lead us to believe that these AI queries are influencing the traffic results from Google. And so I think they just need to be transparent about it, right? I think that's the biggest thing about being an investor in general is that there's no right or wrong. We just want you to be transparent about what's going on in the company.
Yeah, there's a real lack of transparency, and it's upsetting. But I do want to give Google some credit here. What Google has done with Google Trends is something that no other big tech company has done. Back when we had ticker tags, Jordan, we so aggressively tried to get that type of data from Zuckerberg and Facebook, and it was like, absolutely not. The Google Trends is a gift to the world. It's a gift to investors. It's a gift to advertisers, marketers. Honestly, like, I have so much respect for that company by even putting that out there in the world for us that I sincerely just want them to fix it or address it. But you know what else happened this week? So right after I put that post out, like 3 or 4 days later, a lot of these Google search charts normalized. They just fell. Not all of them, but a lot of the ones that I specifically mentioned in that thread completely dropped back to normal levels. So it looks like someone at Google read the thread and adjusted at least those terms that I had written about back to normalized levels, which again just feels eerily suspicious. Like, either fix everything or address it. Tell us you're working on it at least. We'll understand, right? I think it's the AdWords thing that they're worried about, because
If rumors even turned into advertisers worrying about AdWords, then that just becomes a huge problem for Google.